the water, we shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. Union is behind us. We shall not be moved. The union is behind us. We shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We're fighting for our freedom. We shall not be moved. Fighting for our freedom. We shall not be moved. Like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. Fighting for our children. We shall not be moved. We're fighting for our children. We shall not be moved like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. Black and white together, we shall not be moved. Black and white together, we shall not be. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be. We shall not be moved. We shall not be. Just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. Well, now we shall not be moved. Oh, we shall not be. Just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be. Oh, we shall not be moved. We shall not be moved like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved.
Good morning, friends. Oh, good morning. Welcome here to Mount Airy. I'm Reverend McKinley Sims. I use he, him pronouns, and I am so glad to be here with you all doing this that I love and not furiously moving microphone wires around and doing sound checks and all those things. But that's important today because we have lots of wonderful music as we commemorate 10 years of Black Lives Matter vigils here at UU Mount Airy this week. Thank you to our vigil keepers who are helping co-lead this service today, for Mike Foy, who is figuring out our new tech system behind the curtain and doing a great job. And to all of you, whether you're here in the sanctuary or joining us from home, we are glad to be together today. Friends, this is a UU congregation, Unitarian Universalist, which means we are people of differences. Different faith traditions, different understandings, different beliefs about God. We come from different places, speak different languages, move in different ways in the world. And we are people of togetherness who come together here under one roof to explore all the ways of transformation, liberation, and healing. Today's service is a focus on the Black Lives Matter Vigil that happens here every week, Thursdays at 6 p.m. We invited our vigil keepers to come and share a little bit of what they do with the rest of us so that we might learn and grow together. We have reflections from Fern Colhane and Kathy McCoubry, our worship associate today. We have music, both sung and pre-recorded, and we have time to think about what it means to hold vigil in these days. We begin here with what we often begin with, the taking of a nice, deep breath in and out. I invite you to breathe with me if you're here in the sanctuary or at home. Nice and easy in and out. And perhaps one more, in and out. With these centering breaths, we move to light a chalice that is a symbol of our faith. Kathy, would you? The light of the chalice is the symbol of wisdom, spirit, and truth, and the bowl is the symbol of humanity, community, and connection. Kathy is going to light our chalice here in the sanctuary, and I'm going to invite all of us, whether we are here in person or online, to read the words to light our chalice, which come from our religious education program, and they also have hand motions. So the non-italicized words are the words we're going to speak, and the italicized are the hand motions that if you would like to join me in, you are more than welcome to. If not, you can just sit there and say the words as we read them aloud, okay? So we start out with our hands wide and we say, "We are Unitarian Universalists," hands on your heart, "who put love at the center of our lives. We light this chalice today to practice invitation and to reconnect with each other." That's kind of fun, isn't it? Thank you. Our gathering song is number 156 with some new updated lyrics. It's going to be "Oh Freedom," and it's led by our vigil keeper. So I invite you all forward to help sing number 156, "Oh Freedom." Vigil keepers, do we have someone who wants to help light candles for joys and sorrows like we do? Karen, do you want a chair? I'm going to get you a flame. So often on Sunday mornings, we will use a bowl of water and stones. Ooh, I forgot to grab the flame. Sorry, Karen. To light, to symbolize our joys and sorrows that we hold together in this community. Can you light it? I'm going to light that center one, would you? But what happens on Thursdays is that our vigil keepers use these candles for the lifting up of joys and sorrows, for the people that we're thinking about, for the lives lost by state violence. Right? This is our ritual of remembrance. So we want to invite you all into this space today to light some candles. So Karen, let me grab you a microphone, and if you want to show everyone how it's done in a very simple ritual. Of course, our microphone's not on. And then when Karen shows us how it works, if you like, we will come up by the center aisle. But not with this microphone because it's no good. We will come up by the center aisle, and we're going to invite you to speak a name or tell Karen who is on your heart, what you're lighting a candle for today. Mike, can we turn the podium microphone on, please?
Testing.
There we go.
So I'm going to light a candle for a friend of mine whose house was on fire last night. And who else would you like to light a candle for? Okay. This candles have been light for Peter Johnston.
I'm lighting a candle for my 60th high school reunion, which is coming up in 2 weekends. And the candle is that we have some type of healing in our community.
Portia is lighting a candle for her 60th anniversary, 60th reunion. Sandy.
I'd like to light a candle that I believe was also honored 2 weeks ago for my son's death. He died the last day of August, back in 2020.
Sandy's lighting a candle for her son who died in August of 2020.
I have a microphone that I can pass around to you. As a reminder, what we usually say when we're doing Joys and Sorrows is that we are streaming to the internet, so just please be aware that it's not just us here in this room.
I want to lift up Deanna Kemmler and the music community that she's in. She died about a month ago. I want to lift up Ellen Tepper-Formanek, who's critical in many music communities, and we had a memorial service for her this week, but she died about 2 months ago. I want to lift up my sister and her family. She had COVID and a stroke, and she's still recovering from the stroke. And I was there for several days trying to help out because she was not getting the care she needed in the hospital. So, any thoughts?
I want to lift up my friend Reverend Sally White, who was married yesterday.
Karen, please light a candle for Terry Williams, a member of this congregation who's incarcerated in Phoenix, SCI Phoenix.
I'd like to light a candle for James Earl Jones.
I'd like to light a candle for those people managing mental illness, for those people battling addiction, and for the homeless.
I'd like to light a candle for Reverend Joan Sabatino, who's the director of UU Justice PA, who is incapacitated at this moment. She's been in the hospital for the past couple weeks. More information will come out after our board meeting next week. And also for Philadelphia native, R&B singer, and also he was a spiritual leader, Frankie Beverly, who passed away this week at 77.
I'd like to light a candle for all teachers in Philadelphia.
I'd like to light a candle for my sister Berta Hammerstein and brother-in-law Larry Hammerstein, who were very instrumental in the civil rights movement in the kind of southern city of Evansville, Indiana.
I don't think it was mentioned yet, but I would like, hello, can you hear? Candle, please, for memory, Ron Soper, and for Barbara Bunkle and family, that she may heal. I miss that guy.
I'd like to light a candle for Gary Sobolo.
I'd like to light a candle for all those that honk when we were outside at the prayer vigil, coming up and down Stanton Avenue. It's a wonderful feeling. I think they know who we are now.
Please light a candle for Arnold Bradford and Julia Bradford, who were valiant and regular members of the Vigil in our first number of years.
I'd like to light a candle for Mandy, who's my daughter-in-law, who gave birth to a beautiful daughter on August 7th and was fighting for her life following that. And she's amazingly recovering with the support of her husband and her community of friends and family, and her ongoing strength and determination.
I'd like to light a candle for Maria McCabe, who started the Black Lives Matter vigils and who gave us so much courage. She herself went out to meet the Black Lives Matter founders and came back with ideas that never stopped. Keep it real close to you. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
No? Yeah. Okay, this is for Maria McCabe, who founded our Black Lives Matter vigils and is now a Unitarian Universalist minister elsewhere, but we love her still.
And I'm lighting a candle because Francis is saying something I know is important, so I'm going to light a candle. You have the last candle. Yes.
Thank you, friends, for all these candles that are lit. For those online, if you would be willing to share your joys and sorrows and those people you're thinking about in the chat, we will light candles here. We run out of candles on our sacred plates, so we will light more candles for those joys and sorrows. Would you join me in closing your eyes and taking a few centering breaths as we enter into a space of sacred stillness? As these flames burn here in our sanctuary, we invite their light into our hearts. May the memories and lives of those whom they represent embolden us, strengthen us, comfort us, and guide us, leading us onward towards beloved community. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. Thank you, friends. Another thing that happens on Thursdays is we get to hear a wonderful story from Black history or Black history facts, sometimes many of them from Wayne Boyd. So we wanted to bring that into this space today and invite Wayne forward. Wayne, if you want to come sit here in this chair, or you can stand at the podium, whichever you would like. Podium it is.
Good morning.
Morning.
Could you say Black Lives Matter?
Black Lives Matter.
Can't hear you. Black Lives Matter. One more time. Black Lives Matter. Thank you. Also, there's a reason I asked you to say Black Lives Matter, because I'm out there with my sign, honk, and Black Lives Matter sign. I carry two signs. And a man passed by and said, "Oh, I didn't think Black Lives Matter anymore." And he kept on. I said, "Wow, that's strange and kind of powerful in a way, and sad in a way." But after we come back in from outside with our signs, I give them a little Black history facts and information about Black folks that you may have heard of, or you may never heard of, or you were never taught in school. So briefly, I'm just going to give you, and this is just a small bio of each person that you may have know, or you may not have ever heard of a person. Rebecca Lee Crumler. Familiar? No. Okay. That's why I'm standing up here. Rebecca Lee Crumler. More people should know the name Rebecca Lee Crumler. 1831 to 1895. Crumler was the first Black woman physician. She became a doctor of medicine at New England Female Medical College in 1864, just a year before the end of the Civil War. She spent her career focusing on the care of women, children, and people of color who were unable to pay for medical services, and fighting racism, sexism every step of the way. The next person is Elizabeth Freeman. Raise your hand if you're familiar with Elizabeth Freeman. Oh, okay. That's why I'm up here. Elizabeth Freeman. Less than a year after Massachusetts adopted the state constitution, a woman no one had ever heard of did an extraordinary thing. Originally born Mum Brett, Elizabeth Freeman, 1744 to 1829, was enslaved. But she filed a legal challenge, citing the Constitution promise of liberty, and won her freedom in court. She became the first woman to successfully file a lawsuit for her right to freedom in the state of Massachusetts. And there's more, it's a lot more, but I'm just giving you little bits and pieces of it. The next is Mark Dean. Raise your hand if you heard of Mark Dean. No? Okay. That's why I'm here. Mark Dean. If you're reading this on a personal computing device, you've got Mark Dean, 1957 to present, to thank. The scientist and inventor was a trailblazer in the field of computing. Dean discovered he had a knack for working with his hands from a young age, once helping his father assemble a tractor from scratch. He studied engineering in college and started working with IBM soon after earning a degree. At IBM, Dean quickly moved up the ranks, developing 3 of the company's 9 original patents. Among his projects was the first color computer monitor and the first gigahertz chip. Mark Dean. Look it up. The next black person is Jane Bolin. Jane Bolin, hands. Put your hands up. Yeah. Bet you know why? That's why you're here. And you probably heard me mention Jane Bolin. Okay, thank you. Okay. Jane Bolin, 1908 to 2007, stood apart from the crowd at an early age, a brilliant student who graduated from Wesley College in 1928. Despite experiencing racism and isolation from her classmates, she went on to be the first black woman to graduate from Yale Law School, and at the age of 31, she became the first black woman in the country to be sworn in as a judge. She retired from the bench at the age of 70 and focused on volunteer work for local schools. Jane Bolin. Keep that in mind. Time-wise, okay? Good? Uh-oh. Okay, you got me. Only one?
They got to come to Thursday for the rest.
Okay, yeah. All right, I'm going to skip over this and go to Bayard Rustin. Okay. Local man. Westchester, Pennsylvania. Okay. Bayard Rustin, 1912 to 1987, was gay and African American, which meant he faced discrimination on multiple levels. Nonetheless, he contributed greatly towards the progress and the cause of equality in the country. Rustin was one of the key organizers of the March on Washington, where Dr. Martin Luther King delivered his historic-making speech, I Have a Dream. Rustin's work went largely unrecognized at the time, but in 2012, he was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by then President Barack Obama for his work. He is one of the amazing LGBTQ and heroes you didn't learn about in history class. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne.
Now, I'm asking you that please come out at least for one of our vigils, just one. Try it, see if you like it. I think you will.
Thank you, Wayne. So in addition to learning some Black history, some perhaps covered over or unknown Black history, there is a vigil chaplain every Thursday, and that leader is responsible for music and sometimes reading. So we wanted to offer a little bit of the spoken word element that comes with our Black Lives Matter vigils and invite Sandy Fulton forward to read a poem of her own creation. Sandy.
I call this poem Honk. I once lived along the Mississippi, where every winter geese lined up and down the river ice. Now every week I stand with others of my species, like those geese on the ice along a well-traveled avenue in East Mount Airy, waving a sign that sometimes says, Black Lives Matter. But because we have a large banner on our church conveying those words to drivers and riders, I prefer to hold a sign reading, Honk for Justice. This is my sign. I made the sign and I love it. Okay. Most of the travelers notice us and honk noisy as the cacophony of geese with loud air horns, truck blasts, oh, we love those, and beeps of many cars, sometimes waving hands from windows like flapping wings. Honkers of many colors demand justice for themselves and neighbors whose skin color makes them visible targets of weak members of our human species who crave unjust dominance, even murder, for no reason but a moment's surge of power over someone whose integument displays a darker shade of tan than the predator considers justifiable. The persecuted people answer their predators with cooperative action, peaceable like the geese, and as noisy. They are not alone. We who are pale, like me, stand with our darker friends. I am learning that I stand on thin ice for the sake of my soul. I recite names of the dead, wave my sign. We are there to alert others, to make them care. We hope we are warning wannabe killers or shaming them to prevent the deaths of some who could have been victims. When we don't pervert the meaning to excuse our own bigotry or apathy, it's true that all lives matter. But first, we must prioritize those most in peril and extend our help. Doctors call this triage. You've heard of that. That's why Black lives especially matter. And we need to remember the geese, too. Stand up for them and for every living creature. Maintain the flyovers, the feeding grounds, and the birth sites. Respect the mutual aid of all animals and plants, even the smallest living things, and mute processes of life that cannot plead for themselves. But here and now, along the street, we plead for human life.
Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. We invited Fern Colhane forward to share a short reflection on what the vigil means to her and anything else she's going to bless us with this morning.
Good morning. So, how do I connect to this whole process? I need to give you a little background about me, and then I want to talk about us. So, me, kid who moves around a lot, dad in the Navy, pretty oblivious. You know, I think about the civil rights times with the fire hoses and the dogs. I did not know a thing about it. Gradually, though, I started to pick up on things. When I lived in Newport, Rhode Island, I actually lived in the little town next to it. My high school, I don't remember there being any people of color. But I did some activities where I ended up at Newport High School. And that was the first time I noticed the black kids all ate over there. And it really, got me started thinking. The next place we lived was back in Northern Virginia, and I was attending the same school district I had attended for 5th grade, 6th grade, and part of 7th. And I met a kid at my bus stop who lived right next to that intermediate school, my 7th grade school, which was a cool, brand new school. And so I said, well, we must have been in the same grade. And he said, I didn't go to that school. He was African American. And his little street, they were bused. So it hit me that here I had been attending a purely segregated school within Fairfax County and had no clue as a child. So gradually over my life, I was tuning in, trying to figure it out, trying to understand what had I missed. All the authors I'd never read, the facts like Wayne shares with us that I didn't get to know, and I prided myself on, being a good student, but they were keeping things from me. So my life had gone forward from that point, and I ended up here. And I was so pleased to be in this community. And yet, I was part of, inside these walls, a community that I felt mirrored what I wanted the world to be. But that's really as far as it went. I studied, I watched movies, I attended workshops, we did curricula like Beloved Conversations, Building the World We Dream About. I participated, Jubilee, I participated in all those things. And yet the world went on with people being killed. And when Michael Brown was killed, and his body was left on that hot asphalt for 4 hours, and his family could not get to him, it broke me. And so when Maria set up a vigil, I was there. And I realized this is what I needed. I needed to be out there. I couldn't, do grand things, big gestures, but I could show that I cared. And that we as a church community cared about our neighborhood. And that's what's kept me doing this. I think we knew, starting out, that our actions, even being there every week, we weren't going to fix it. And there was no end point, that this was something that was ongoing. And I think there was a core group with Maria who were in it for the long haul, and we still are in it. The benefits to us of getting to meet our neighbors, seeing people coming down the street. I wish Anthony was here. Anthony Clark first stopped at the vigil and then became one of our members. Barrington Walker, the same thing. He got off the bus and he said, I needed to find this today. And he found us. It isn't that we're not doing the vigil to get members, but to be known, to be seen. Folks that are walking by and they pretend to beep, that call out to us, people across the street who wave, recognize that we are here, part of their community, and that we have the same concerns and values, that we want to live together. That's it. Thanks.
Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. Thank you, Fern. Kathy McCoubry.
On keeping vigil and staying vigilant. I offer this reflection in honor of our vigil keepers. Those souls who have been on the curb out front every Thursday since August 2014. While many of us have joined the vigil at times, there is a core group who have proven their constancy to a better world in our name. I am speaking of Wayne Boyd, Fern Culhane, Sandy Fulton, Annie Gaheb, Bruce Pollock Johnson, Louise Spears, and Karen when she can. Thank you. I also honor all of you who have showed up at the vigil to demonstrate that Black Lives Matter, as well as for your commitment to undoing racism in ourselves, in our congregational life, and beyond these walls, as Maria McCabe so often implored us. Maria was our director of community ministry when Michael Brown was killed and left in the street. She was called to Ferguson, where she was transformed by a growing movement. Along with guiding our early vigils, Maria kept updating a scroll of the names of people of color who had been killed by police that she unfurled on the floor down the center aisle every Sunday, a list that lengthened with the passing weeks. It was a token of horror and grief in the land, laid in our path. Keeping a vigil is an act of staying awake, especially at night, to be with someone who is suffering or dying, to protest or to pray, or all three. Stanford's website states that, quote, vigils are a powerful gathering of human spirit, an expression of remembrance, solidarity, and support in the face of loss, violence, and heartbreak, end quote. Vigils make space for grieving, protesting, and honoring pain and rage with rituals of silence, of music, of sharing experiences, of naming the lost, of poetry and sacred texts. To participate in a vigil is to open one's heart to crushing realities. It is also a particular quality of connection with others and with the values and truths that sustain us in the most grievous times. Beyond our Black Lives Matter vigil, our Unitarian Universalist faith calls us to be vigilant in the service of dismantling systemic racism, including subtle behavioral manifestations as well as structural and procedural ones. While we learn and practice centering love and live into the values of justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity, we still have the eighth principle: to remind and guide us toward the recognition of patterns of interaction and institutional arrangements and practices that reinforce the norms of white supremacy, and point us toward strategies for decentering whiteness and building a culture of radical acceptance and liberation of ourselves and each other. This year, two groups are already at work on processes to engage all of us in our collective self-determination toward beloved community. Our new strategy team, including David Devan, Bruce and I, Holly Job, and Anam Owili-Egger, will be reaching out later in the year to understand how we currently function and how we see our future. Additionally, a large cohort is participating in the second phase of Beloved Conversations Among, a program of the Meadville Lombard Theological School, which focuses on developing skills to assess our development and make recommendations in different areas to become a more fully anti-racist, multicultural, and liberatory congregation. While the eighth principle states our commitment to anti-racism, its achievement requires concerted vigilance, a stance that has different connotations for white people and people of color, given our multi-sided histories of chattel slavery, Jim Crow, and mass incarceration. However, we are all tasked with staying alert and registering their historical and ongoing effects on ourselves, in this congregation, and in the larger community, for the purpose of repairing the harm done and creating new forms of our communal life. So my vigilance starts with trying to remember every day that I'm supposed to be white, that I have been designated in our society as a white person, thereby gaining unearned privileges and resources, and that social construct profoundly affects how I perceive and am perceived by others, both other white people and people of color, and how we relate to each other. Well, I don't remember every day because I don't have to as a white person, which makes me prone to acting on my deeply socialized assumptions of superiority. To the extent that I am not always conscious, I can be fickle, and that makes me unreliable and maybe not such a dependable co-conspirator in anti-racism. The inconsistencies and persistent racism of white folk contribute to a social environment in which a person of color must be on the lookout for unpredictable threats, subtle and overt, to their personhood and safety. This kind of self-protective vigilance is mandatory, requires significant cognitive resources for paying attention, and induces stress. For me, being trusted at all under these conditions is a gift, and working together is heaven and wholeness. UU's of Mount Airy is where I experience the possibility of tackling and transforming our old ways, of decentering, if not erasing, whiteness from my own life, of making room for all of me and for all of us. This is where I can join the long haul of making reparations for harms to the First Peoples, African descendants, and people of color. You are the community whose examples of public witness and nurturance of heart and spirit brought me to the visceral imperative to participate in the Interfaith Action for Palestine in DC last July. Multiple actions over several days disrupted a national conference of white Christian nationalists who were lobbying Congress to support the Israeli war effort. UU's, Mennonites, women rabbis, and many others came together to sing, to deplore, to call out, to grieve, to celebrate life, to push back on the white Christian narrative and influence whose racism denies the humanity of so many people. I found new freedom in a larger community of celebrants that were well organized and deeply grounded in their faiths. In honor of our vigil keepers, including its co-author Bruce, let us continue to apply the eighth principle here in its home congregation, recommitting ourselves to journey towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. Amen.
Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. Friends, this is the time when we share our offering of both money and music in this space. These are resources for the nurturing of this community, because we know that there are many ways to give back to a congregation. If this is your first time with us, there is no expectation that you put anything in the plate that's going to be going around, except perhaps maybe the contact card that is in the pews to let us know how you found us and how we can be in support of you. For those of you who would like to give back in other ways, we encourage you to find a way that works for you. Your time and energy are just as valuable to us as dollars and cents. And for those who do choose to give financially, your money or checks put in the plate for today will be used to fund the everyday operation of this congregation. And any money that you put into the white envelope that says change for change on it, and any pocket change that you put in the plate goes towards a different social justice organization each month. And this month it is the Beacon Community Theater Players, or Beacon Community Players, who are holding a show here at the end of October. And we invite you to find more about that by checking us out online and finding ways to give there. The plate will now be passed around and gratefully accepted, and the offering of music will be given in return.
yourself. And please join in on the chorus, which we'll start off with.
Thank you, friends. When I was in seminary, thank you, it was an interesting time. I went to a Presbyterian seminary, which is a Christian denomination, and my first year was the 2012 election, and in the second year, that summer, Michael Brown was killed. And then in the last year, the Presbyterian Church voted to allow gay marriage and ordain gay clergy. So I was aware from the moment I set foot that not everyone was on the same page, even in a seminary, in a progressive part of the world, in a well-educated part of the world like Princeton. And I was part of a group there that called themselves the Justice Friends or the Justice League. And that's how I got connected and how I really felt connected spiritually. So my ministry while I was in seminary was in Trenton, New Jersey, just right across the river. And I worked with young kids, working on getting them out of gangs and trying to prevent gun violence between peers. And Michael Brown was killed, and then we started having different conversations and what Black Lives Matter meant in that community. So I was immersed in all of this as my friend Niall, we were 24, he was ordained and sent to Ferguson to be a pastor to the people there. He dropped out of school to do that. And then I would come back to class on Monday morning and sit with lots of my white classmates who were talking about what we were reading and what tests we were going to have. And the difference between the world and the world was so stark. But I found so much solidarity with my friends in this justice group that these were the conversations that we were having. And it was a multiracial group with my friend Taylor, who was helping lead it, who lives here in Philadelphia now. And we had to have a hard conversation when the Black Seminarians group hosted a Black Lives Matter vigil for the seminary campus. And we were not included, not necessarily invited, by some not necessarily wanted, because we were a white group. And that was hard to hear. Hard to hear for the black members of our group, hard to hear for the white members of our group. But what we were being invited into was the experience that all of our people of color here are familiar with. That there's a difference between knowing and experiencing. One of my favorite movies is Remember the Titans. It's a movie about segregated Virginia and the first integrated football team, the T.C. Williams High team. It's a Disney movie that Disneyfies the story, but there's an incredibly powerful scene with one of the white players. You may remember this. His nickname is Sunshine, Ronnie Bass. Sunshine Ronnie Bass. He's a white guy. He's from California. He has long hair. I very much identified with Ronnie Bass when I was little. And he takes some of his African-American teammates to go out and they want to get something to eat. And he says, "Oh, this is my favorite restaurant. This is a great place." And the black players say, "No, man, we can't." He said, No, it'll be fine." He said, "No, you don't understand." He says, "No, it'll be fine. Trust me. I know this experience." And of course, they experience racism and they're asked to leave the restaurant. And they're so upset. And Ronnie Bass comes out and he just can't make sense of it. He says, I'm sorry, I didn't know, P. I didn't know. And one of his teammates says, "Man, what do you mean you didn't know? We told you."
Yeah, right.
We told you. I'm talking to some of my black classmates. I said, "Man, I didn't know." I said, "What do you mean you didn't know? When you look around the seminary, what do you see? When you look around your world, what do you see? When you look at your Facebook friends list, what do you see?" Right? There are two Americas that we live in. And it's hard to get a passport to cross back and forth between. The invitation of Black Lives Matter, as hard as it was for me to see the images on TV, as hard as it was for me to feel rejected and slighted, right? As hard as it was for me to feel guilty and like I was somehow responsible, the invitation that my classmates were giving me was to not just step into their world for a hot second, but to really be together, to move across two Americas and be together in it, and to help hold that. I would like to think that my presence there has been helpful. Maybe it has. Maybe it's been more work for them in some ways. But what I found was that Black Lives Matter, as triggering as that was for some of my family back home, which made it sound like, well, doesn't my life matter? White lives matter. Blue lives matter. All lives matter. The invitation that I was experiencing was, I'm not black, and yet blackness is a part of my life, is a part of all of our lives, is a part of the American story, is a part of what it means to be here at this congregation, to live in Philadelphia, a black city. And that if black lives do not matter, if black lives are not centered, honored, respected, included, listened to, empowered by those of us who are white, then my life is not full, is not complete, is not whole. That my life is only made whole when we recognize the truth behind Black Lives Matter and the stories that go along with it. And this money that we take up every week that goes to this congregation, some of it goes to keeping the lights on, some of it goes to me, and the stuff that goes back out into the community, that is impacted by blackness too. And that is how we can be in relationship, even if we are not people who come to a Thursday vigil. It's a way to be in relationship. When we show up to our Justice Council meetings, that's a way to be in relationship. When we partner with other organizations, with other groups, especially Black-led groups, that's a way of being in relationship. And that invitation to be in relationship is the one step. As Wayne invited you to come to one vigil, see how it changes you. But also recognize that we live in two Americas. And while we can't solve that at our Thursday vigils, it's a great way to inhabit a side of life that you're not familiar with. It's a great way to be in solidarity with each other and to learn from one another and to be made more whole by that experience. The call of Black Lives Matter is not just a call to get involved in every protest, come on down. The call of Black Lives Matter to all of us is to be made more whole. To prevent physical violence, to prevent state violence, to work on reparations and transformational justice. But at its core, right, is to remind each other, when we look around this room, what do we see? We see people of difference and people who are together. And both those things have to continue to be true. That we honor the differences amongst us and we come together in these two Americas. So maybe this becomes a place where there aren't two Americas for at least an hour on a Sunday or a Thursday. May that be so. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved.
As we get ready to extinguish our chalice and end our time together this morning, please remember to stick around for announcements in the slides and downstairs during coffee hour. Folks on Zoom are invited to check in with each other and one of the ministers afterwards. For more information on what's going on in the life of the congregation, you can check the weekly newsletter that comes out on Thursdays, or you can peruse the insert in your order of service. Finally, check out our website and social media pages for more important updates using the hashtag or account tag Mount Airy. The words to extinguish our chalice are adapted from John Lewis. Please read them with me here in the sanctuary and at home. We carry this flame, stoke courage, raw courage within us and those whom we impact. May our good trouble lead to better days for all. May it be so. Amen. Our closing hymn is Ella's song, "We Who Believe in Freedom Cannot Rest." We invite you to stand in body or rise in spirit as we sing this hymn together, led by our vigil keepers.
This was written by Bernice Johnson Regan, and she wrote it
Okay. And not sing into it. Okay. This was written by Bernice Johnson Regan for civil rights activist Ella Baker.